Here's today's First Word Daily Devotion.
We turn to March 16th, Numbers 14, and in previous chapters, that is, remember Numbers chapter 11, we saw the rabble. They started their grumbling. And here, notice as we encounter the text in Numbers 14, the grumbling now spreads to all of Israel, and this is not going to be good. Let's read this. Then all the congregation raised a loud cry, and the people wept that night, and all the people of Israel grumbled against Moses and Aaron. So all the people are grumbling against Moses and Aaron. The whole congregation said to them, "Would that we had died in the land of Egypt, or would that we had died in this wilderness. Why is the Lord bringing us into this land to fall by the sword?" And then in verse 4, let us choose a leader and go back to Egypt. Then Moses and Aaron fell on their faces before the assembly and the congregation and the people of Israel. And here we have two heroes again, and Joshua, the son of Nun, and Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, who were among those who had spied out the land, tore their clothes. And here's their report. The land which we passed through to spy out is an exceedingly good land. Now here's the key, verse 8. If the Lord delights in us, he will bring us into this land and give it to us, a land that flows with milk and honey. And then again, the repeated phrase in verse 9, the Lord is with us, do not fear them. And then the contrast in verse 10, then all the congregation said to stone them with stones. Look how hard their heart is. But the glory of the Lord appeared to the tent of meeting, to all the people of Israel. And so here we have God coming to Moses and saying, how long will I put up with these people? They put me to the test. God says, I'm going to wipe them out, and I'm going to raise up a whole nation just with you, Moses. So in other words, God says, I'm going to forget the promise that I made to Abraham. I'm going to forsake the promise that I made with Abraham. And of course, Moses intercedes. And this intercession is important because he asked the Lord to fall back upon his grace as well as his glory. He asked the Lord to remember his glory, to remember his promise, and that in and of itself is an act of grace. But it doesn't mean that there's no consequence. Look at what happens. Verse 17, and now please let the power of the Lord be great as you have promised, saying, the Lord is slow to anger, abounding in steadfast love, forgiving the iniquity and transgression, but he will by no means clear the guilty, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children to the third and the fourth generation. So in other words, Moses is saying, Lord, please remember your kindness. Please pardon, verse 18, verse 19, the iniquity of the people according to the greatness of your steadfast love, just as you have forgiven this people from Egypt until now. Now notice this, verse 22, none of the men who have seen my glory and my sight that I did in Egypt in the wilderness, and yet have put me to the test these 10 times and have not obeyed my voice, none of these shall see the land that I swore to give to their fathers, and none of those who despised me shall see it. But my servant Caleb, because he is a different spirit and has followed me fully, I will bring into the land in which he went, and his descendants shall possess it. Now verse 25. Since the Amalekites and the Canaanites dwell in the valley, here's a key phrase, turn tomorrow and set out for the wilderness by the way to the Red Sea. And so in other words, their lack of readiness, their disobedience meant their grumbling. And so their unbelief is what led to grumbling. And that grumbling, of course, and that disobedience led to disaster. Verse 36, and the men whom Moses sent to spy out the land, who returned and made all the congregation grumble against him by bringing up a bad report about the land, these men who brought up a bad report of the land, that's repeated there on purpose, died by plague before the Lord. Of those men who went to spy out the land, only Joshua the son of Nun and Caleb the son of Jephunneh remained alive. And so then they get in this mode and thinking, well, so since God's already said this, let's just go ahead and disobey him even further. Let's just turn, and instead of going the way the Lord has said, let's go ahead. Now we have this sense of confidence let's go ahead and take the enemies. But look at verse 42. Do not go up, and here's the key, for the Lord is not amongst you, lest you be struck down before your enemies. Verse 44. They presumed to go up to the heights of the hill country, although neither the ark of the covenant of the Lord nor Moses departed out of the camp. Then the Amalekites, Canaanites who lived in the hill country, came down and defeated them and pursued them even to Hormah. In other words, their stubbornness is on full display, and that grumbling, unbelief, and stubbornness meant their disaster. And the key phrase throughout that chapter is the Lord's presence being amongst them. What is to be desired even above land and fine gold? What's to be desired? The presence of the Lord. Then we turn quickly into our New Testament reading just to point it out. Luke chapter 2 stands in a bright contrast to Numbers chapter 14, and I wrote in my Bible, thank God for Jesus Christ, which is exactly our reason for reading and our hope when we read. Look at verse 14. Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace among those with whom he is pleased. Now, reading that in light of Numbers 14 brings a whole new meaning. Now, we'll close today's reading by focusing our attention on Proverbs chapter 12 and verse 7. The wicked are overthrown and are no more, but the house of the righteous will stand.